Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we're going to talk about that report a little bit. We're going to talk about that because I've had people ask why my commentary of the revelations coming out of Texas, why it stopped. And the simple answer to that is I try to keep this channel suitable for everybody. And most of my commentary has not been fit for public consumption. But that report has come out. And it says that there were systemic failures in Uvalde. Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's true. And that report, it's part of those failures. It is part of those failures. Because it diffuses responsibility. I mean, let's be honest for a second. There were officers on scene immediately. That's not a failure. That's ideal. And it broke down from there. Right? But the report casts a wide net and diffuses responsibility. That report is part of the problem because it hinders responsibility and accountability. And without accountability, there's no change. There were systemic failures, there were cultural failures, there were individual failures that day. To me, the systemic failures started in 1981 with Warren versus D.C., a ruling that said cops, they don't have a duty to protect the general public. It was reinforced in 1989, DeShaney versus Winnebago County. Supreme Court got in on it. Cops don't have a duty to protect the general public unless some form of special relationship had been formed, like a prisoner in custody. Other than that, they don't have a legal obligation. Now, I would suggest that students attempting to fulfill state-mandated educational requirements, I would suggest that that special relationship exists. But what do I know, right? Maybe that needs to be written down somewhere. So there are systemic failures. There is no duty to protect. And that systemic failure, that created a cultural failure. Cops aren't there for the idea of protecting and serving anymore. It's a law enforcement, right? They feel no duty to the public, no obligation to the public. So you get statements like, I'm going home at the end of my shift, right? And that cultural failure leads to individual failures. And by that, in this case, I mean every single person with a firearm who was present. According to that report, almost 400 cops, 376, responded. 2 companies. And they couldn't take back a school from one person because they didn't feel an obligation to. Because they didn't have a duty to, legally speaking. If you look at that footage, look at the cops outside, and that pretty much says everything. They're facing the wrong way. They're looking out at their enemy, the public. $376, 2 companies. For comparison, Operation Neptune Spear, that was the raid to snatch or otherwise remove the most wanted man on the planet. You know how many operators were involved in that? About 80. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand that the cops there in Texas are not as well trained. I get that. But the cops there in Texas were also not involved in an operation to snatch the most wanted person on the planet in a non-permissive environment at night. They just had to deal with one person with a rifle in a school. A person that, according to reporting, had 315 rounds in that school. Live and fired. When it was all said and done, 315 rounds in there. 376 officers. They had enough people to pull a Zap Brannigan offensive. This report, in the way it diffuses responsibility, means that nothing is going to change. This is going to happen again. It will happen again. And I guess the only thing that would change it is for legislation to be put forward to spell out the legal obligation to act immediately to protect kids in a school. I think that's probably the only thing that would change it, because apparently they literally need that written down. And here's the thing. If you want to know about the state of law enforcement in your area, push to get that statute written and see whether or not the cops in your area oppose it. Because I'm willing to bet most of them will. Most of them will do everything they can to stop that statute from existing. Because, again, it creates responsibility and therefore accountability. I think that might be a good little litmus test. See how things really function. And whether or not the law enforcement in your area is worth anything. Whether or not they oppose the idea of having a responsibility to save kids. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.